Hello, all. I am Deepa Mahesh, a leadership coach and a facilitator. And I'm very excited to be back again with the podcast Leader's Voice, where we amplify the voices of champions who practice energy driven leadership. What is energy driven leadership? Inside and outside are related. You can be very successful in the outside without inner mastery. But here we invite guests who are successful in the outside and who practiced inner mastery. And today we have yet another guest on this episode, Harish Narayan. Harish, welcome to this episode.
Thank you, Deepa. Thank you, Deepa. Joy to be with you.
Absolutely. So, would like to introduce Harish Narayan. Harish is a joyful explorer of life and human potential. And in today's session, today's conversation, you will see glimpses of this coming up. Harish can not absolutely hide this, true nature of this. His vision and purpose is to support the flowering of human consciousness and holistic well being, which is psychophysical, emotional, and spiritual. Through his work as a transformational life coach, creativity coach, and teacher of the movement arts, Harish inspires and empowers individuals across the world to know themselves deeply, unlock their potential, and live authentic, joyful, and purposeful. So, in one such space, I met Harish, and it was so joyful to know Harish and so aligned with my purpose. And whenever we get to talk to each other, we exactly say ditto. Because most of the things I would be talking, Harish would say exactly this is what I want. And when he says it, I would say the same. Isn't it, Harish?
Absolutely.
Harish holds a master's degree in mechanical engineering from Purdue University, and he spent years in the US as a senior SAP logistics and supply chain consultant, serving major multinational organizations. In 2017, he felt a powerful calling to leave behind his successful corporate career and pursue his deeper purpose. Yet another similarity, just that the year is different for me. He embraced the unknown and the path less traveled in service of his larger vision. His creative canvas spans nature, spirituality, self development, human psychology, movement, coaching, teaching, writing, poetry, storytelling, health, nutrition, and more. Wow, that's a range, Harish.
That is always open.
But above all, Harish lives as an artist and a creative being in the whole sphere of life, infusing his spirit and essence into all that he is and does, the doing and the being. Since 2021, he has dedicated himself to coaching and teaching, supporting leaders, professionals, creatives, solopreneurs, outliers, and those seeking to align their being and doing to harmonize their inner and outer worlds and live exceptionally joyful. Harish has trained extensively with world renowned teachers and mentors in the human development and creative transformation space. He holds several certifications as a deep transformational coach and Master Kaizen Muse creativity coach. Very interesting. I would love to know more. Drawing from over 2 decades of immersive personal transformation, inner work, and spiritual evolution, he brings the wisdom of his own journey to guide profound self discovery and lasting transformation. He founded Alchemy Unbounded as an evolving vehicle for his coaching, teaching, and vision, believing that each of us is an artist in our own unique way and that life itself is our greatest creative work. Wow. How does it feel to hear about you from
I,
someone?
I have never heard myself in third person, and even writing this and sending to you in third person was very interesting and quite funny, But
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah, you're correct. It's only three-fourth an A4 sheet. but very, very interesting. And it's very interesting for me because when I was in a full-time career, uh, that time I never thought of bringing the inner and the outer worlds together. The outer world was where I was living. The inner world kept calling, but I don't think I heard my inner world. And it took me time to really leave my corporate career in 2013 to really understand that there is an inner voice, and then pursue that, and then the journey unfolded. How was your journey, into quitting, and what sparked that for you to quit and pursue this path?
Yeah, it's a very deep question and complex question, I guess. So I'll try and be more succinct, but I guess I've always had a very rich inner world, even as a child, right? Even though outside I was very maybe normal, was very happy to be with family, was happy to be with strangers, but I've always had a very, very rich inner world right from childhood. And I think somewhere, maybe in my teens to maybe my mid 20s, was a very, very difficult, challenging time in my life. There was a lot of uh, complex emotions, just not understanding myself, uh, all kinds of things, from existential loneliness to boredom to lack of meaning, purpose, lack of connection. Physical health was not in very good. I was always an overweight kid. Um, and then I think somewhere there was anger, rage, there was violence, there was guilt, shame, you name it. So I've felt all of it in my sort of younger years, and a lot of it was self-created, or pretty much all of it in a sense. But those years were very, very difficult years for me. It was a sort of dark years of my sort of younger life. Um, and I think at that time I did not know, how to get help or even to share or express. Or there wasn't really. Uh, I really had no idea, you know. So I think, but that set the stage, for what was to come, sort of later in my life, right? So the journey was my own in the beginning. So I would say that the inner journey, or maybe probably began in my mid 20s, 24, 25. I'm 46 now, you know. And I think it started with a friend of mine, who's still a very close friend of mine, whom I happened to meet in my grad school in the US. So I had gone to the US for my grad school, and so he just listened to me, without any judgment. He was very curious. He said, like, "Oh, okay, what happened? This happened." But I think he helped me, um, just sort of just by listening. I think he gave me. He held space in a certain sense, and he was going through his own journey as well. So he was having all these questions. He was a little older than me, 5, 6 years older, and then he also introduced me to J. Krishnamurti. Sure, you know Krishnamurti very well, and there was a book called "Think About These Things," which was one of the first books I've read of Krishnamurti before I even watched him on video or anything. And that book was just really touched me to the core, because I think everything that he spoke about was something I had always felt. I was kind of rebelling with society, with with cultural conditioning, all of it. I was questioning everything. I've always been a seeker. I've never been a follower, right? I was always questioning things, right? I wanted to find out the truth, and I felt very maybe suffocated. There was a lot of frustration, because I felt very misunderstood, um, and I also felt like the people around weren't really too interested in all of what I was really feeling inside, right? So for me, Krishnamurti just spoke to my heart, all the things that I had, and and there the journey kind of began. And then I remember watching Krishnamurti for the first time on a video, this was an interview, very famous interview done by somebody called Bernard Levin and Krishnamurti. It was one of the most beautiful interviews I've seen. And Levin really goes after Krishnamurti, and Krishnamurti responds with such clarity, such delight, and there are no conclusions and stuff. But it was the first time I watched him, and the integrity of the man, it was just spilling all over him. I could feel that. And I think it's something I've valued all my life. I've always been a man of integrity, and so that really set the sort of journey. So I think Krishnamurti was really a mirror for me to really understand myself, really very, very deeply. So you can call it self-study or swadhyaya. There's many names for it. But at that time, to really deeply understand myself as I am, right, with my shadows, with all my challenges, with my struggles of all my younger years, and then just things. Now I look at it and you can call it healing and you can call all these words, but at that time I didn't even know all these things. I had no idea about coaching or any of these transformations, or all these things were not so much in my sort of mind space, right? I just wanted to understand myself more than anything else, right? And so that journey has continued. For the last 20 years, Krishnamurti has remained the most beautiful human being I've ever seen. He remains probably the most significant influence in my life. But then thereafter, I've had so many different, very eclectic, very diverse kinds of influences that have shaped my journey. I can go into more maybe details, but I guess that gives a bit of how this journey started.
Absolutely. What was the turning point? What sparked you to quit your job? You said it was a great career at that point in time.
Yeah. So I think this also had somewhere the seeds were sown much earlier, right, in my younger days, right? So even though I was working in the corporate world, I was living a fairly normal sort of life, I think something was there inside, always. It was always there, right? It was just growing and evolving, right? And I think it was not that I was burnt out, or I loved my job. I loved my consulting role. I loved people. I loved process. I loved systems, right? And also through my years of work, what I really realized was that I'm really a helper, healer, nurturer, teacher at heart, right? And that's what I did even in my corporate role, right? And a very, very creative soul. So I always chose to work as a contractor or a consultant. I never took a full-time job or an employee, right? So because one of the things I value a lot is my creative freedom. So I was almost like a kid in the corporate playground, right? I had no fear. I worked on my own terms. My bosses were almost like my assistants. I had wonderful bosses for the most part, except maybe a 6-month period or something, right? So really, I got away with a lot. I was very good at what I did, of course, so I really enjoyed my job and my career, and I was probably at the peak of my career at that time. But I think that I had met certain people, and I think there was this calling of living a creative life. And I mean it in a very deeper sense, right? We often have this notion of what is creativity, and we say that somebody who does arts or who writes, or often seen as an expression. But for me, it was something deeper. It was like really creativity for me was like a creative life means to really step into the unknown. To surrender to something that is calling you, to be so true, to be so aligned, to be so passionate that so the calling was just growing in a certain sense, and it had reached a certain point where it felt so organic that I just gave up my job, I gave up my career, I gave up the money, I kind of destroyed all my identities, and I was almost like wandering in search of the miraculous, so to say, so to give you a kind of shortest answer.
I get that. So fast forward now, where are you on this search?
I think I'm living a magical life. I think you ask anybody else around me, they probably would describe me as one of the most joyful people they ever have met. Um, but no, it's been a very, very beautiful, beautiful journey. I think it took me a few years, even after I quit the corporate job. I didn't really immediately look for something. I was really trying to figure out how to give form to my sort of vision and purpose, right? I figured that, I really want to do something for human well-being. This was my interest, right? And really support the flowering of human consciousness. That was my deep purpose. And I had that even back then, right? But I wanted to do it with absolute integrity for myself. Uh, I do not mind starving, but I really felt like I'm willing to die for my art, but I will do it in a way that that feels sort of right to me. So I was in no rush. I took my time, even with the world question. Everybody was questioning around, um, and so really it took me almost more than 4 years, or around that. At the time, I'm an avid hiker. I'm a backpacker, so I love the mountains. I spend a lot of time in nature. I was exploring all kinds of different things. I've gone and done manual labor. I worked at farms, worked in warehouses. I used to design complex inventory management, warehouse management systems, and I used to go. I've worked there, done gigs of all sorts. So exploring all kinds of things, right? And then again, some encounters, you call them encounters, or certain meetings with certain people, happened, right? That sparked that, hey, coaching is something, as we know, Krishna, he would say that coaching is as close to Vedanta, right? And I also felt in a very similar sort of sense, right? I didn't have this term, but what it means is that I'm not telling someone what to do. I'm really helping someone find their own silence, find their own wisdom inside, right? So it felt like something very aligned to me, right? And then of course coaching, and I've always felt I'm a teacher at heart. That's really what my sort of this thing was, right? Uh, so the journey since then, the official journey of coaching began in 2021, right? With my first client. It's been very organic. I've taken my time. I've not been in any rush. I wanted to test the waters, see how I felt, see how others felt, whether people are benefiting, right? So uh, every step has been just beautiful, and yeah, I'm here right now, and the journey sort of continues, and my vision is, I think, a lot more expansive. So right now what I do is, just for me, it's just one way uh, of and right now all my work is individual, right? But I'd love to do group work, facilitation. There's all kinds of possibilities that exist, right? But whatever I do, I want to do it with give it my all my heart. Want to do it joyfully. So a lot of possibilities exist. It's an evolving sort of journey. So that's where I am right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You work with leaders, and you know how distant some of the leaders can be from their inner reality. Yeah. So, what could be one of the reasons why that exists in today's times?
I mean, so I think first of all, you have to understand, what is this leader? When you say leader, what does it mean, right? It is, so for me, and I will work with anyone who's really interested, right? So whether it's leaders, whether it is, creatives, or actually I wanted to say soulpreneurs, not solopreneurs in the
Yeah. Okay.
so
Yes.
yes. So so for me, a leader, for me, it's a role that you're playing. Okay, just like
Yes.
we have many different roles, you can
Yes.
be a leader, and there are different kinds of leadership, right? Um, uh, and for me, first of all, you're a human being. This is the most basic kind of thing, right? So leadership is not a title. It is not some kind of designation. It is not some performance, right? It is not about authority. Uh, it is not about any of these things. It is about presence. It is about a way of being, and from that being, whatever that doing happens, right? So there's an alignment that has to happen between the inner and the outer world, right? And also leadership is just it's a role, right? So sometimes even a leader, he's a leader. You may whether you're leading self leadership, or my mom would be a leader at home. She's managed my home. She never worked professionally, right? But wow, the kind of thing she has done and sacrificed, and holding the family, holding space for me in my most difficult times. Is that not leadership? So we can look at leadership in many different ways, right?
Absolutely.
And uh, and and really everything starts with the self. What kind of relationship do you have with yourself? So when we speak about inner work or inner mastery or whatever you want to call it, right? It is this. What is the kind of, can you have that kind of intimate, raw, honest relationship with the self, right? And this is not easy. This is very difficult. You can be a leader, a CEO, an actor. You can be anyone in the world, right? And there are countless examples through history as well. You've seen people hugely successful outside, right? But people have committed suicide. People have struggled with so much, right? So there is no substitute for this kind of deeper work, in a sense, right? So whether you're a leader or whether you're anybody, this kind of inner work is like almost like a foundation. If you build a house, if you try to build a house without any foundations, it is a matter of time before it collapses.
Yes.
Right. So those were some. Don't know if I.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and this connects with what you talked about, that your mission also is about spreading the message of holistic well-being. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So uh, again, a very deep and complex question, right? I'm trying my best to articulate. Right. So if I look at my own journey, I would say there are many themes that have happened in my sort of life. One of those themes is, I would call it, a journey from fragmentation to wholeness. We really do not know what wholeness is. It's a lifelong sort of journey. It's a very beautiful journey, right? Um, but holistic means you're embracing the totality of yourself, totality of life, in a certain sense, right? Of course, you could look at it from, could have frameworks. You could have look at it from, uh, you know psychophysical kind of well-being. You could look at emotional well-being. You could look at spiritual well-being. This is more a matter of language, and semantics, right? But everything is interconnected. Everything as a whole, right? One thing always affects the other, right? And we live in a world today which really uh, almost glorifies fragmentation, isolation, right? We like to divide our life. We like to look at all these different aspects, even within ourselves, right? It's like almost there are, 1,000 different parts of yourself, right? And if each of them is pulling you in different directions, let's say, right, there's always going to be conflict,
Yes.
right? So this journey is about, uh, yeah, when I say holistic well-being, it means you are looking at something in totality, whether it is small, whether it is big, every aspect of your life, right? And it's a lifelong journey. So we are all students of life, right? I've always been a student of life. It doesn't matter how far I have traveled or wherever I have gone. Uh, you must approach this journey with utmost humility, right? Yes, you can be confident in the work you have done. That is wonderful, right? And you can project that, and that comes from something that is rooted in being authentic, right? Something that is so true, right? Um, but yeah, so this is like and it's a and it's a journey not to get somewhere, not to there's nothing to achieve, there is nowhere to get in a
Yeah, yeah,
deeper,
yeah, yeah.
right?
It's a
It's a
journey
lifelong
inside.
journey.
It's a journey within.
It's a
Absolutely.
journey inside, and we
Yeah,
go as far as we can.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We
I
do.
love what you said about fragmentation to wholeness.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very deep concept, and seldom we understand this actually. Beautiful. Thanks for articulating it so clearly, as clear as you could. Yeah, absolutely. And when you talked about fragmentation, it's very, very uh, akin to, I mean, it's very connected to the concept of inner mastery that I talk about. Because again, my life is what I know the best. And what I've seen is that I have been present to the inner fragmentations. And because of which the havoc of emotions, thoughts, confusions, dilemmas that it creates, and confusion about confusion. Why the hell am I confused? And when this happens, success comes because success had come to me all throughout, but it comes at a cost. And not every time this inner fragmentation also keeps you stuck and does not allow you to get out of it. I mean, I took that bold step, but after so many years of suffering, actually, and realizing that I can't take it anymore. And energy leaks. So, you would have experienced that in your journey or in the journey of people you hold space for. Could you throw light on that?
On specifically what was the
On how people leak their energy and how this inner fragmentation of thoughts, of emotions,
yeah,
of these thoughts and dilemmas leak energy, and success comes at a cost.
sure, yeah. Again, these are all very deep and complex questions, right? So, um, hmm. I think first of all, you have to understand what is success. First, you have to ask more fundamental questions, right? So we have defined success in a certain way, right? And culturally, socially, our own conditioning, personal these things. There are all kinds of ways people define success, right? Um, in reality, there is really no such thing as success or failure or all these things. In existential reality, there is no such thing in a deeper sense. These are man-made constructs in a certain way, right? Of course, we live in this world, right? So first you have to ask yourself, what does even success even mean to you, right? And that's a very, very individual, that itself is a journey in itself, right? What does success mean to you, right? But generally, if you look at what the definition of success is, which means you have a great career, you're rising up the ladder, corporate ladder, whatever it is, uh, you're making a lot of money, right? You're successful in your relationships and so on, right? There are many ways to look at it, right? But look at the general kind of this thing. Um, uh, the inner dimension is always playing out in the outer world, whether we know it, whether we understand it, whether we realize it, right? There is always energy leaks that is happening, right? Um, so so yes, we might be successful, or as the world sees you're successful, in a certain way. Um, but you have to question yourself, of all of that. Something that is coming from, we almost live secondhand lives. It takes enormous courage. It takes enormous clarity. More than even courage. Courage comes from clarity in a certain sense, right? It is not sufficient only to be courageous. You must have a certain amount of clarity, right? What is it that is worthwhile for me to do in this life? Whether for myself, whether for my loved ones, whether for others, and things like that, right? Um, so the way it has played out and I will give an example of my own sort of life. I think maybe the first, I would say, if I were to just for language break it down, right? Because all this is interrelated, right? But maybe the first 7 to 8 years of my life, of my inner journey, was really putting my psycho uh, psychological and emotional space, because that's where the greatest challenge for me uh, held. It just happened that way in my life, right? It doesn't mean that everybody has to start there, right? You can start anywhere, and something will emerge, something will lead, as long as you walk the path and just continue taking steps and go on the journey, right? Willingness to go on the journey, right? But for me, there were a lot of energy leaks just at my psychological and emotional level, right? So at the level of thought, at the level of emotion, at the level of deeper patterns that sort of played out, right? So for me, first thing was to put that in. I would describe it as put it in order, an order in a deeper sense, right? We can look at order and disorder, very fascinating, things. But relative order, let's put it that way. I don't know what real order is or whatever, right? But relative order, right? Some level of stability, some level of understanding, right? And I think once that happened, then I started looking at my physical sort of self. So as I mentioned, I was always overweight as a kid, right? And I progressively put on more and more weight. I was still very successful in my corporate life. I used to go to the work and come back and was doing great and all of that, right? But at my peak, I was almost 135, 140 kgs. This was back in
Oh,
2000, right? And I just thought at that time it was my genetics, or that's just how it is. I didn't know much about health or nutrition or any of these things. But at some time, I figured also that, I can't be just talking. I have to live it, And I've always had this very strong this thing, even from beginning of my journey, right? I don't want to talk. I must live it. Maybe it is not possible to live 100%, right? It is not like some goal or something, but something that should come from lived kind of this thing, right? So obviously, I'm not paying attention to certain aspects of my life, right? So for me, the next sort of how do I say, like a opening, so to say, was through the physical self, right? So I really took some time off from work. I changed my environments. I moved from one city. I moved from Houston to Bay Area in the US. I took some time off just to focus on my physical well-being, right? And it was miraculous. In 10 months, I lost about 100 pounds, which to come to think of it was just mind-boggling. It just opened up new dimensions. Um, so so the energy leaks that were happening on account of a body that is lethargic, body that is not, uh, uh, you know, uh, the body was becoming an obstacle, right? So it was not so much about losing weight or something for me, even though for outside, a lot of people were like, wow, it was never about weight loss. It was really about putting my body in order so I can access my full potential. That was really my deep desire behind it, right? Of course, I did practical things. I studied nutrition. I was very interested in health and nutrition, but I studied very little. I take principles and apply it, right? And sometimes I surrendered and things happened, unfolded in a certain way, right? But those were and that opened up completely doors because I started, I was then hiking, I was playing sports, I was doing things that gave me joy. I was moving, and today, at 46, I'm teaching movement to people. I almost can't believe it. I mean, I almost can't believe anything I'm doing right today in a certain sense. It's almost like a child. And I've always had this very childlike sort of essence, and I've kept that alive all these years, right? So energy leakages happen so many different ways, right? It's very complex, it's very nuanced, it's very subtle, right? It's also very specific, very individual, right? It also depends on the time in your life, the phase in your life, right? Um, so and one has to look at it, one has to pay attention to every single aspect of life, right? It's not easy, right? It's not easy for me,
absolutely.
it's not easy for any of us, if one is really honest, right? It means I show up for the work every single day, and maybe, it cannot be, there is no perfection or anything of this sort on this journey. It is like, can you enjoy this process? Can you fall in love with this process? We always love outcomes, right? But very few can fall in love with the process, right? And that's where the magic lies. That's where
Yes.
it's like almost cultivating a love for life, cultivating a love for exploration, right? Without any detachment to outcomes and goals. And I've always approached this journey like this, through my last 20 years. And whenever sometimes I have maybe held on to something, it's almost like uh, it's almost like an energy leakage over there, you know. So I don't know where I was going with that. I touched,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I'm sure
And
you.
no, you bang on, and I see reflection, I see awareness, I see that you saw some signals and you took actions.
Yeah,
And these are significant things you did in your life to look at the leakage, understand it's a leakage, and take actions towards that.
yeah, and again, the absolutely right. Of course, I took action, but then again, you
Yes.
also ask what is action, right? But sometimes it is not always about doing, right? The work happens in a beautiful dance between kind of the inner and the outer and the being and the doing. Like, let's say, for example, you're triggered. Now, I work with a lot of people, right? The leaders. I work with a lot of other variety of different people, young people. My youngest client is probably as young as 23 years old, and I've worked with somebody as old as 66 so far, right? But energy leakage is happening all the time, like at different levels, whether you're young or whether you're older, right? Whether you're in a leadership role or whatever is it, every time you're triggered, right? We are triggered all the time right now, right? We are living in a world in which everything can trigger us, right? We are hurt, right? Every interaction, every conversation, every decision you make, every choice you make, right? We live in a very complex. We are living in a very complex world, right? So there is energy leakage happening pretty much, at every level, right? And I think what the great challenge I think today is that transformation is an energetic process. Any kind of transformation, right? Beyond just action, outer action. You can willfully do action sometimes, as many people do, right? Many people force things. You push yourself, you will yourself, and it may work for a certain time, or it may give you some outer results from things like that. But eventually, it is like, how do I put it? Man is nature, and nature is man, right? So you must study nature. Like nature is not just being in nature. No, I spend a lot of time in nature, but also I speculate. I'm contemplating all the time. I'm observing, right? I learn from nature. Nature is my greatest teacher, and I am nature. We are nature, right? Nature is inside of us. In the way we are just from organs and bones and all of it, right? To everything, we are nature, right? So, so if you look at nature, you cannot force anything. Any growth or any transformation, it happens in its own time, right? What you can be doing, right, is to really create the conditions in which something can flower, something can grow. That's all we can do. That's not what is in our hands, right? And the great challenge today is that because transformation is such a energetic process, it requires a certain kind of, you have to create space. There has to be stillness, right? And to create that space, it's very, very challenging, for a lot of people. People are busy, people are doing things, people are doing, they have, constraints, they have responsibilities, right? It's not easy, right? But it's possible, right? But transformation can only happen with energetic surplus. You cannot have any transformation. So if you're leaking energy, you have to find ways to, how can I not leak energy? That is one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is like, how can I create energetic surplus in my life, right? An energetic surplus could be something like, hey, I have a physical practice that gives me energy, right? Like being with you, for example, is energetic surplus for me. It's a joy, right? I love being with you, right? I love being with the people so many beautiful people have come into my life, right? I mean, the people I work with, it's a creative exchange, right? So for example, I'm in a coaching session, right? And sometimes people wonder, of course, coaching is very different from teaching. The energies are very, very different, right? But sometimes, people wonder, like, it takes a lot of energy to listen, to hold space, to really to understand another person, to sense, to hold pain. It takes enormous amount of energy, right? So there is even a certain kind of, and maybe to share also, right? There's a certain amount of energy that is being dispersed, so to say.
Yes.
But at the same time, because the interaction is so beautiful, it is very joyful. It's almost like a creative exchange in a certain sense. So you always replenish. So I always look to replenish in different ways, right?
Yes.
This is
absolutely.
This is a very ongoing, very dynamic kind of process. So every stage in your life, maybe what worked for you at maybe when you were 35 may not work for you at 43, right? Or may not work for you at 50, right? So you have to constantly keep looking at it, right? As a kind of feedback mechanism, as a kind of feedback loop, right? And adjusting, tweaking certain things, right? And how can I create this sort of energetic surplus? And how can I minimize energy leakage, right? This is where the magic sort of lies.
Absolutely.
Right? And this is
this is what I observe in leaders. that is not happening. Replenishing is not happening. Morning to evening, start of the day, phone, end of the day, the last message that goes. And there is also this narrative, I don't have time to do any practice. So, what would be your message to such leaders who say, I don't have time?
I don't have time. It's what is the message? Again, a very, of course, it very individualized, very personalized, very contextualized, right? As a general thing, I'd say it is useful to make this time to do this kind of work, right? It is important, right? Not for me, not for you, not for it is for you.
Yes.
This affects every aspect of your life, right? Whether you want to be successful in whatever way you want, whether you want to lead, it doesn't matter, right? You must make
space set.
More than even time. It's almost like how do I put it? You must make a space and a priority for this kind of work. You must realize the significance of this work.
Yes, actually that. Yeah.
And sometimes it feels a little vague. It's like, what does it even mean? How do I even start, right? Or what is a practice I could potentially do, right? A practice is just a kind of like it's like a doorway to something, right?
Yes.
Practice needs to become a way of life. It needs to become a way of being, right? Then it is real practice, right? Then it is deeply integrated, right? So the message would be this is important work, right? Not because I'm saying it, or not because somebody else is saying it, or whatever. That's not the point, right? The point is, you must take some time, right? This is very beautiful work, right? And it's going to help your life flower in ways in which you probably can't even imagine, and I think once you see that for yourself, or maybe you have a glimpse of it. I'm sure many people have had a glimpse. Every human person has had a glimpse of
some routines. Yeah.
Not just routine, right? Some people have had a glimpse of love, of magic, of wonder, of stillness, of connection, deep connection, of authenticity, right? Aren't these beautiful things? Of trust, right? Of intimacy, right? Deep intimacy, right? Aren't these the most beautiful things in the world, right? Not because it's my idea, but I'm just saying, that you have to ask yourself, right? And if they are, then you will make the time for it. You will, and it's a very individual journey, right? There is no one path or one.
Sure. What you're saying is in that focus, the connection to why it's important for me, it precedes the activities. It's much more than the action. It's the alignment to the purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Why?
A deeper alignment at all levels, right? And then the action follows. Action follows that kind of. See, when you're clear, when you have clarity, you don't choose. We often think that I have to make, like, if something is so clear to you, do you choose? You only choose when you have to make a certain choice. I mean, I'm not talking about more functional choices, like should I buy this phone or should I buy that phone?
Understood.
Whatever. Right? Then you probably do some research, you compare, and you do all these things and all. But other decisions, whether it is professional decisions, work decisions, things like that, if you're clear, right? Hey, then you will naturally do it. So anything that you naturally do, it's almost this idea of like effortless effort, right? Of course, it is work. Everybody has to do that kind of like work, but it begins, and in the beginning, there's always going to be like a period of like maybe struggle, and everybody has to pass through the struggle, right? It is essential struggle, not the it's nourishing struggle, right? And then at some time, it begins to feel just a way of being. It begins to feel more effortless, right? And this beautiful way of like doing without doing, or effortless effort, right? And this is art, and it's a lifelong process, right? And we all do the best we can, right?
You have a way with words, Harish, I must say. Creative surplus, effortless. I mean, there's so many beautiful
No,
nuggets that.
it's actually very hard for me to uh, communicate my sort of inner process or my inner journey, or even this journey of mine, right? But these are all not just words. These are not just sort of ideas, really. But I have looked at it, right? I lived these things. I have looked at it very carefully,
Yes,
right? And
yes,
and for me, um, and I've also seen that when I've maybe approached some things in life with these sort of this thing, then some things have opened up, some things have
open.
flourished.
Yeah,
And in
yes,
other ways, when I have not, right, it has not opened up. So it has also taught me, things in sort of life.
yes, absolutely. Lovely. I mean, there's just so many nuggets that I'm chewing on. And, and as I listen to you, I'm also becoming aware of the choices I have made. And they were not effortless for me. It was effort, but I stayed on course because I knew, I think I was connected to the purpose. And after a point of time, it became like, that's the only choice. I mean, wake up and do this is the only choice because I knew that it reduces my fragmentation. And I used to measure. I mean, my measurement was not so numerical, but I knew that if I'm enraged X number of times and I'm enraged lesser, or the rage has come to irritation, and not rage. So I'm sparing people around me, and that's my measure. And I have measured at every point of time. So I know that I'm moving, and I call you what you call wholeness, I call integration.
Yeah.
So I knew at some point of time that these practices were enabling me to shift from fragmentation to integration. And then I felt, oh, it's worth it. It's really worth it. And I, one more thing which I see in common is what you went through, you're actually sharing with humankind now, which is so beautiful, which is so beautiful.
Absolutely, right. And who doesn't want? Tell me, who doesn't want to live
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
joyfully, right? Who doesn't want to live without stress? Who doesn't want to live
Yes,
without unnecessary stress? I'm
yes,
talking about, right?
yes,
There's the good stress also, right?
yes, yes,
Who doesn't want to live without any unnecessary conflict,
yes,
right? Who doesn't? Do you want your emotions and to be pleasant, right? All of us want this. Every single human being, if you're sane, right, wants this, right? And it is our birthright, right? This
yes.
is how we came into this planet, right? Unfortunately,
Abs,
because of
abs,
so many,
yeah,
because of conditioning, whether it is
yes,
familial, whether it is social, whether it is cultural, whether it's our own sort of these things, we have made a mess out of it, right? And you'll be surprised, how many, I mean, hugely even very very successful people, struggled with all these things, right? So, but every human being wants this, right? And this is the work, right? And I absolutely feel that it doesn't matter if you're if you're maybe young, maybe it's a wonderful place to start, right? Even young people can be wonderful leaders of tomorrow, uh, right? And it's something you leave behind for future generations of humanity.
yeah,
and
absolutely.
and even if you're older, right, maybe it is a little more difficult, little more challenging, right? Because uh, but hey, you can always start. Everybody can start, right? Everybody can start, and we can start now,
Absolutely.
right? Just the willingness itself is a beautiful beautiful thing.
Yes, yes. And viewers, for those who are watching this, if you don't know where to start, reach out to Harish. Just have a conversation with him, and things can open up. Because when it is, he's so clear that's his purpose. And if that is his purpose, then he could be the right person for you. And I wish that genuinely, Harish, that people, the flowering of human consciousness that you talked about, I really co-hold it with you. And I really, I want to see every human being stress free. Some amount of stress is fine,
Yeah.
but why carry beyond? So I really wish you for your work to flourish, and I wish for many people who need your being, forget work, but your being to reach out to you. And if you're watching it, please do reach out to Harish. Yeah. Any closing words that you have before we
It's
sign
always
off?
it's very interesting for me to sit with you here in a
Yeah.
podcast type of environment. But no, it's just a joy, right? I
Yeah.
think when I met you the first time, I felt some sort of connection. I felt our essence was similar in a way, purpose. There's a deeper alignment in
Yeah.
a sense. So it's a joy, and always it's also very fascinating how this whole conversation sort of unfolded, right? Because I really,
Correct.
I don't, I never speak with any, script, or I have no idea. I can go, in many different places. So it was very beautiful. It was very organic, right? And it's a joy. It's a joy to share the space. I hope the people listening, uh,
Yeah.
maybe take something away from it. Uh,
Yes.
right,
Yeah.
and yeah, if anyone feels called, please do reach out. It's a privilege, right? So yeah, thank you. What can I say? I mean, thank you so much.
Thank you, Harish. And I will tag Harish when I post this in LinkedIn. So you would get his coordinates from there. And uh, I will come back with yet another Leaders Voice episode soon. So stay tuned. Thank you, Harish.
Thank you, Deepa. Thank you so much.